I'm here.
You're listening to the Virtue Podcast, brought to you by the Great Hearts Institute. Good conversations around the great conversation. Welcome back to the Virtue Podcast, and it is my extreme delight to welcome not one, not two, but three colleagues from our collaborative organization over there on the East Coast, Brilla Schools Network. And I have three of the members of the Bria Network, beginning with Stephanie Saroki de García, who's the co-founder and managing director of Seton Education Partners. Also have the lovely Yeime Valle, who is the chief of programs for Seton's El Camino Network, and last but not least, chief academic officer, Douglas Minson. Welcome to all three of you. This is the largest group I've had on the Virtue Podcast, so thank you for this first.
It's great to be with you. Thanks, Dr. Jackson.
Thank you.
What a pleasure. I was delighted after having spoken in times past with some of your colleagues from Bria, thinking of Michael Carbone and Luann Zerullo, to discover that we've got a group coming down to visit with us in Phoenix next week of more than 20 teachers and school leaders, all from the Bria academies. And you are going to be coming down here in part to tell your story and the origin story of the Bria schools to a much larger audience, more than 750 folks who are going to be with us. So tell us today, if you would, give us a little preview. Where did Bria come from? Stephanie, are you there? Did we lose Stephanie? All right, we lost Stephanie. Either Yeime or Douglas, please let us know a little bit about the story, the distinctives of the model and these school communities that you all are working with.
Yeah, Bria, and I'm sure it's not going to be as compelling as Stephanie telling the story. Hopefully she gets to join. But Bria is really the answer to the closing of Catholic schools. Stephanie Saroki de García with Scott Hamilton had the opportunity to go over the country to see what people were doing, right? They closing our Catholic schools and all. Not only they closing the Catholic schools, but we're also losing like some of the key elements, right, that Catholic education brings. Stephanie and Scott wanted a model that was sustainable. So that's, we're a charter school, financially sustainable, character rich. And for those who seek it, a vibrantly Catholic wraparound after school program. So that's how Bria was born.
It's
Douglas,
beautiful.
I'm sure you can add. I'm sorry. I'm sure Douglas can add to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's inspiring, and it's really the thing that drew me to the Brilla Schools Network, that Seton Education Partners saw this really unconscionable dilemma where parents in the most underserved communities, arguably in the country, had absolutely no choice for their kids, and they were, confronting the prospect of being consigned to something that was just intolerable in their own estimation. And these entrepreneurs, Hamilton and Saroki, are really heroic because they said, what can we do? What kind of creative solutions can we find to provide something that honors what these parents want to give to their kids without the benefit of the resources that it would typically take. So what's really extraordinary is how cleverly they drew upon the tradition of release time and ways that public schools in the New York metropolitan area had in the past accommodated people of faith to approximate what the Catholic educational system, what the archdiocesan schools had been providing, with a combination of release time and, or rather, in our case, instead of release time, an after-school catechetical program that's separately staffed and separately managed, but collaborates with the best of this Catholic educational tradition as it's come to us through the classical liberal arts tradition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really striking. Stephanie, so good to have you back here. I was just asking about the origin story of the Bria schools. Maybe you could just add a little bit, as you think, as I think you probably heard, we do recognize something heroic having taken place here. So what inspired you to do this?
Yeah, well, I was working in Washington, D.C. for a national network of philanthropists. I was not looking to leave my job. I loved my job. I found meaning in my job. And I had done Teach for America in 1998. So before it was the cool thing to do. And my parents, you know, who were immigrants from Iraq, we are Chaldean Catholic Iraqis, kind of thought, well, we just helped you get a degree from UC Berkeley, and now you're going to teach in Oakland, California, at the second toughest high school in the district. And the district was very dysfunctional at the time. And that experience was transformative for me. I was a rhetoric major in college, and my parents would say, "What is rhetoric? And what are you going to do?" And I say, "Don't worry, Mom, I'm going to law school." Well, I didn't go to law school because of my experience in Teach for America, but I truly felt that teaching without being able to talk about God was like having one hand tied behind my back. And I remember that Michelle Rhee, who had been trying to recruit me while I was working in philanthropy, became chancellor of DC Public Schools, and she invited me to her home and tried to convince me to run philanthropy for her huge effort there. And I was really intrigued, and I called my older brother, who's a priest. They call him Father What a Waste because he's so handsome. I said, "I'm really thinking about this job. I believe that it could literally save lives. I really believe that." And he said, "Stephanie, if you can't talk to kids about God, you're only going to get so far with them." And that has really, really stayed with me. And so my co-founder, Scott Hamilton, who was not Catholic, decidedly not Catholic, at about the same time that I was asked to host a meeting on who will save America's urban Catholic schools for a group of New York City-based philanthropists, he was asked to do a research project that got a ton of attention because they released it when Pope Benedict visited DC. And we were literally in a bar. It's kind of like the joke, a Catholic and an atheist walk into a bar. And I said, here we have Catholic schools shutting down across the country. They were for so long the Americanizing, equalizing force for underserved children, especially new immigrants in this country. And I was trying to convince him to do something about it. And he said, "Stephanie, I'll do something about it if you do it with me." So I went home that night. I was 32 years old, and I picked up the phone and I left a message for my older brother. And I said, "Anthony, I know what God wants me to do with my life. Call me back." And Seton Education Partners was born. And it was really a response to the mass shutting down of these institutions that had provided a holistic education, not just academic excellence, but virtue formation and faith formation. And if you think about what it means to be human, it's mind, body, and spirit. It's all three of those things. And we wanted to find a way to achieve those goals through different school models that were sustainable financially. Because in the 1960s, at the height of Catholic education, 95% of your staff were brothers, nuns, and priests, mostly nuns. They were the original Teach for America, I like to say. And fast forward to today, fewer than 5% of your staff are nuns, brothers, and priests. And so the church had essentially been funding Catholic education for new immigrants and the underserved, and can no longer afford to do that.
It's really compelling, Stephanie, to hear you recount that demographic shift and the way in which Catholic education, which had served the underserved, in some sense dried up, or at least did not have the resources, and as a result, eventually started to fill that pinch. I remember 20 years ago, Saul Stern writing an article for City Journal, profiling St. Aloysius, right? And saying, we've got to help this school. Now, Stern, I don't know how deep any convictions went in his Jewish faith, but I know that he understood and complimented the fact that that school had served that community faithfully for more than a half century. And its demise.
You think about Black and brown Americans who have made it in this country, whether it's Sonia Sotomayor, there are countless others, and they will say they went to parochial school,
right?
And that was the beginning. And Scott and I kind of looked ahead, and we looked at the current pace of closures. We have 20 years before there are few, if any, Catholic schools left in our underserved communities. And we got a call from Cardinal Dolan. He was set to shut down 60 plus Catholic schools. And he said, can you guys help us? And our original idea was to pair a KIP or a Success or one of the other high performing CMOs in New York City with a parish, and the parish would offer optional after school faith formation. And the Cardinal said, no, I want you to do something from scratch. And so we decided, Scott, who had identified the 2 original KIP schools and had led their growth for the first 5 years, turned to me and said, you want to do this? And so, I had been a teacher.
You didn't know any better? You didn't know any better? You didn't know any better.
Well, naivete can be actually a really good thing in entrepreneurial organizations. Wendy Kopp would say the same thing.
Sure.
And so I think that was a blessing for us. And it was a little bit strange because while I'm one of 6, first generation college graduate from this immigrant family, my parents couldn't afford to send us all to Catholic schools. And so I attended, the local public high school and a very underserved middle school. And when I spoke to Cardinal Dolan, it was Cardinal Dolan, all of his auxiliary bishops, his CFO, his general counsel, and a high net worth individual who had been supporting Catholic schools, but was seeing that they were shutting down. And so knew that they were going to shut down 60 plus schools. And that was just going to be the first wave.
Oh, geez.
That they were going to be future waves. The Archdiocese just announced 11 more Catholic school closures. Predominantly, they did it yesterday, predominantly pre-K through 8th grade schools in underserved communities serving Black and brown children and many new immigrants. And I said to him, well, what if we built a classical school and we had a focus on truth, beauty, and goodness? And what if we had a deep a deep virtue formation program that was kind of embedded in everything we did? And then what if we paired it with this optional after school Catholic faith formation program? And the Cardinal showed tremendous courage. And he said, I think we should try this. He was ready to try one.
Yeah, right.
We'll
take a shot.
If it works, we'll do more. And that's how we got started about 10 years ago.
Well, I'm just taken. I really am taken with the name, right? Something in a name, as we say, right? The name
Jamie's
is.
Gonna have some.
What's that? Go ahead.
Jamie's going to have some comments on Bria, but Bria means shine in Spanish. And shine is one of the most frequently found words in the Bible.
Yep. Jamie, why don't you tell us a little bit about it? What does that word and name mean to your school communities? How does it resonate?
Well, Stephanie said it, right? Like the word itself, right? Like it like I like to explain it, is for our communities. It means more that is in Spanish,
Mhm,
right, than the actual meaning.
mhm,
Because the word brilla, it's for our communities, for our families, the families that we serve, means you're speaking to me,
mhm, mhm,
you're calling me, you want to serve me. So yes, of course, is Bria, like what we want to be in this community is a guiding light. We're gonna talk a little bit more about that, about what is our presence in the community. We just don't want to be a school, one more school, but we
mhm,
want to be part of the community. We want to be able, like, to guide our families, and to be quite frank, with the after school program, our Seeing Teaching Fellows program, guide them back to Christ, right?
mhm,
Guide them back to the church.
mhm,
So as I like to say, the fact that it's in Spanish,
mhm.
and speaks to our communities.
You
Right.
know,
And the demographics, I mean,
Yeah,
just
if
to
I
give
can,
you,
Rob, it also stands out to me that Bria reflects our commitment to prepare young people for success in high school, in college, and beyond. But it's
mhm,
also a reminder that they're part of a community, right? They are called to bring what they receive as part of their formation and share it with the world around them. That
mhm,
takes on a really acute and important dimension in the El Camino program, where, of course, they come to recognize that they're called to be the light of the world and to
mhm,
let their light shine.
mhm,
But that would be true of the kind of formation that all of our students receive, that they then have obligations to their neighbor.
mhm.
And so they're being fitted and prepared to bear witness to what they've received as students.
and we can talk with our children in a secular setting about letting their light shine. We can do
Sure,
that.
sure.
We can't proselytize, we can't evangelize during the school day. And it's really important. God loves our freedom. He loves our freedom.
Mm,
And we, even in our mission statement, we use the word choose. Parents choosing what they want for their children. And
mhm,
it's a rare thing for an education organization to orient their mission statement around the role of parents as the primary and first educators of their children. And we really take that very seriously at Bria.
mm,
Yeime says it better than I do, but but you can, during a secular school day, talk about the cardinal virtues, the natural virtues.
mhm, mhm,
And even so, courage, justice, wisdom, self-control, those were the child-friendly terms that we decided to represent the cardinal virtues.
mhm,
And because we were starting out with kindergartners and first graders, and we grew a grade level at a time. So we started out with 200 kindergartens, first graders. We have 1,600 plus children right now. More than 90% of them qualify for the federal meals program. 1 out of 5 of them has special needs, and
mm,
about 40% of them are multi-language learners, which means English is their second or third
mhm, mhm,
language,
mhm,
not their first language. And so one of the things we're able to actually do at Bria that many Catholic schools struggle to do, but want to do, but they struggle to actually serve children with special needs, and they struggle to serve multi-language learners because they aren't given the public funding that is necessary to really provide children with extra. Well, every child has needs. I mean, I have 2, and they each have their own needs. They're very unique and different. But we have money to actually add more staff
mhm,
and
mhm.
specialists, speech pathologists, social workers, etc. And that's one advantage to our financial model. But the biggest advantage, I mean, we aren't a Catholic school. We're not a Catholic school top to bottom. We're a secular virtues-based public school of
Mhm,
choice,
mhm.
paired with an optional after-school faith formation program. And about 40 to 50% of our families opt into our after-school program.
What's so beautiful as you're mentioning those cardinal virtues, Stephanie, is how I can detect very easily, almost right on the surface, these features of the classical model that obviously were attractive to you and to Bishop Dolan and others who gave you a shot. So maybe you can elaborate a bit on the features of a classical model there at Bria that are in fact drawing more people, more families, as you said, who are choosing this model because of its identification with a long-standing tradition. How does that
Well,
look?
I will say a few words, but I think Douglas should chime in on this.
Sure.
Our families very much value virtue formation for their children, very much value it. So when you think about what our families care about, they want a safe school.
Mm-hmm.
They want to feel like when they walk in the door that they have the dignity, that they're given what is due to them as human beings and children of God is the way that I would frame it, but that they are respected when they walk in the door. And that's why we have bilingual staff. Our operations team is predominantly from the community and predominantly bilingual. And there are more than just Spanish spoken among our children, but that's the predominant language of our multi-language learners. And so they want dignity, they want respect, and then they want academic excellence. But before they want that, they want their kids to have good character. And that's really important to our families. And it's very attractive to them. So I think I'll let Douglas chime in, but we are one of the few organizations we've kind of struggled with. We believe that if you don't measure it, it doesn't get done. And so we do have measures around not just academics, which are a little bit more straightforward, but also around growth in virtue and also around growth in faith. And they're not perfect measures. And we've struggled with kind of how to think about this because everyone has freedom and everyone has choice. But I'll let Douglas chime in.
Douglas, you want to tell me a little bit about the classical model and what that looks like at Bria?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for bearing with me. I have an audio problem here, so I haven't been able to hear the exchange you had with Stephanie. But I think what's so beautiful about the educational platform that we're able to provide for children is that we're welcoming them into a living tradition. We invited Ty Jones, he's the artistic director and producer of the Classical Theater of Harlem, to speak at our State of the Schools event last month. And he so compellingly presented to our staff the encouragement of the words of Shakespeare becoming their words, our words. And the idea that our children would receive this great patrimony is built right into the design of Bria. There is nothing in our cultural inheritance that these kids aren't entitled to every bit as much as any other student in the country. And we want to make sure that nothing is withheld from them, that they really have the opportunity to drink deeply and fully of the best that has ever been thought and written down and passed on from one generation to the next. I'm inspired by Yaroslav Pelikan's observation that the work of tradition is the living faith of the dead. It continues to maintain its vitality, and it's something that can be received by each generation that comes thereafter. And we want to welcome our students, our children, into this living, breathing, dynamic tradition. We want it to become theirs, and those enduring works, right, give them the eloquence of Shakespeare or Frederick Douglass or Martin Luther King. It becomes their standard, and it then becomes a tradition to which they contribute. They not only participate in it, they not only receive it, but it prepares them to be that shining example of what's possible and the best of our humanity. And I know that you and Stephanie have been covering a holistic commitment to the formation of the person. So it's really the kind of backbone on which we can do that work of shaping the whole person by drawing on that really rich and enduring intellectual tradition to complement the moral tradition that we're attempting to provide.
It's beautiful. It really is, to hear each of you describe the value, the dignity of each of your students and what you hope to transmit to them, what you hope to give them, which is theirs, rightfully theirs, their legacy. You specifically at Bria refer to foundational principles, and there are 3 that I'd like to highlight here. I find them compelling. You speak of human dignity, as has been mentioned. Stephanie, you mentioned that, as well as free choice. And then thirdly, enduring truths. These are the foundational principles. At the core, there is, as you've stated on your website, an introduction to love. I'd love to have you elaborate on the relationship between love and these 3 principles of dignity, human dignity, freedom of choice, and enduring truth.
First of all, I love the question. I'm going to just say one word about it. My favorite definition of love is to will the good of the other.
You know your Thomas.
So, well, Seton was originally called Aquinas Education Trust, and then there runs a set of companies named after St. Thomas Aquinas. And is that his definition? I don't know if it is, but
I believe he certainly recapitulates it. So we'll assume he gets some credit.
And we ended up having to change our name to Elizabeth Ann Seton. I'm really glad, because she was this amazing entrepreneur. She was a mother. She was a convert. She suffered so much, but she did so much good. And the lasting legacy of Catholic education is hers for the underserved. And so, but this idea of to will the good of the other, I mean, you can talk about that at a secular school. You really can. Now, in the after school program, I'll give you an example of kind of our definition of justice. Justice is to give the other their due, right? To give others their due. And then in the after school program, it's to give God and others their due, right? And so for those who opt into the after school program, they are learning about virtue in the school day, but then they're learning about how the faith just adds this additional kind of an additional supernatural element. But I'll let Yeime or Douglas chime in on your question, because it's a great one.
Douglas, I'm not sure. I know you may have some audio problems here, and Yeime, you're welcome to chime in as well. But this idea of love, right? Learning to love and its relationship to those foundational principles of dignity, freedom, and truth.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's fun for me to speculate about what Stephanie was probably providing, right? I'm imagining she was offering some comments about, with your reference to St. Thomas. Presumably the idea of knowledge is the adequation of the mind to the real, that's inspired by our orientation to all that is good, and sort of the erotic appetite of man inspiring us to seek the divine. I think at the end of the day, or at the beginning of the day, education has to be guided by an anthropology, right? And what you see in honoring the human dignity of each and every human being in our schools is a recognition that every person is unique and irreplaceable, and made for a meaningful, significant purpose, and that they're capable of exercising choice, right? Free choice of the will is a reminder that we are all moral agents. And so the shaping of our minds to behold truth, the shaping of our hearts to guide us in the seeking of what is good, is a reflection of just what it means to be human. The enduring truths are those things to which we have to submit ourselves, that our agency is only meaningful insofar as it aligns with reality. So the love that we have, St. Augustine told us that it is our love that really distinguishes us. It tells us who we are, what we love, defines us in many ways. So a classical liberal arts education presents students effectively with what is most lovable. And then that exercise of shared truth seeking that we do together as a learning community helps us to find what is lovable, not only in what realizes our capacities or our potentials, but even in the very act of that truth seeking together. And it's in that way that we grow in friendship and we reinforce that work, that pursuit, as a shared pursuit of a community.
Jamie, what would you add to that?
Well, their answers were like very complete. I will only add that we cannot love what we don't know. And that's especially for El Camino. That is our mission, to get our children, our disciples, to know God and to love Him and His church. I wanted to say something because when we were talking about the shine, this shine question, and Brilla, one of the things that you will see happening at our schools is that the children are learning the virtues at Bria, right? But they learned them like 2 weeks before during the after school program. And we did that intentionally, right? Because we wanted them to be able to go in the classrooms, right? When the teachers are asking, can somebody give me an example of courage? We wanted them to be able to say, San John of Arc is an example of courage, right? So some of that shine like happens at the school. So the children, what they receive in their giving. Also, like another example is that one of the teachers once asked the kids, well, we would like to, anybody, we want to learn new words. So please, have any of you learned any new words recently? And one of the first graders said, transubstantiation. The teacher had to call me and be like, Mrs. Valle, what is it that you guys are teaching during the after school program? Love. Love is what animates everything that we do. Getting our children to recognize love, to love each other, to love themselves. It's what animates everything that we do. So this is important for us.
Well, it's beautiful. As I said earlier, it's luminous and it is inspiring, which I see and detect not only from your words, but from my firsthand observation. I was able to drop in about 5 years ago now. One of my former students happened to see me from across the cafeteria and came running to tell me all about her work with the schools and her inspiration for joining that community. Now, when Bria speaks about promoting student growth in those virtues, it'd be helpful if you could just give us kind of what those virtues look like as they're manifest in the school. And again, very practically, because as Stephanie said a few moments ago, we like to measure everything. We like to measure everything because that shows that we are making progress. How would we go about measuring virtue, which again is not as tangible as a score on a test, for example?
Douglas.
Oh, I'm sorry. I like I said, I've got audio problems. I wasn't sure if Stephanie was still on. Yeah, I mean, stepping into what seems to be a qualitative space is pretty challenging. But I think one of the geniuses of the Bria School model is the commitment to the shared formation, the shared holistic formation of children in partnership with parents. So in many ways, our collaboration with parents is guided by those assessments of growth in the cardinal virtues. Do we see a disposition toward preferring the other to ourselves? Do we see a lived orientation to justice? Do we see a deliberate effort to exercise practical wisdom? Right? Do we recognize the ability to exercise self-control and restraint in an age of indulgence? And we're checking with parents about whether or not these aspirations and really what our curriculum is ordered to do, are they finding a home in the hearts of these kids? Is it something that goes beyond their ability to use the language of the cardinal virtues, but something that they demonstrate in how they live their lives, with their brothers and sisters? And is that something that we are seeing in the classrooms themselves, right? As you know, Dr. Jackson, every classroom is itself a laboratory of virtue. The work of a shared learning community requires courage. It requires taking chances. It requires confronting mistakes and being corrected and receiving that correction with humility. So how are we recognizing the growth in virtue? Well, it's inextricably linked to the growth in academic success. The formation of the intellect is dependent upon the formation of the heart. In a way, it creates the conditions for the possibility of deeper and truer understanding. So we do have the data, we do have the polling and the survey work that we do with families. We have the evaluations of teachers, but I think at the end of the day, real meaningful academic success and real understanding and a growth in the love that we've talked about of learning itself is a reflection of how successful we are at helping students to grow in the virtues.
Stephanie?
I would just say virtue formation is integrated throughout the day in everything. And we have a chief character officer, and we have character leads, and we have virtue formation weaved into lesson plans. And one of the things that we really believe in is that forming adults is what's most critical if you're thinking about helping children grow in virtue, because what are they seeing being modeled? And I think in our early days, we saw, we actually had, we pulled the teachers together. We have now 300 plus staff across our network of charter schools. And we are growing, actually. We've got 6 campuses. We're growing. We're going to add 2 more middle schools in, I believe, 2025. And then this fall, we're adding 2 schools in Paterson, New Jersey, an elementary and a middle school. And then we're opening up a version of Bria called Brillante in South Texas in the Rio Grande Valley. That's also opening up this fall. So there's a lot of growth of this model on a national scale. We haven't gone online yet. We're a little nervous about doing the online work. But I'm really, really happy to see Great Hearts do that. We just had such a brutal experience during COVID, and especially for our youngest scholars, we, and I even see it with my son was in 1st grade. He was supposed to learn how to read, and in Zoom school just was absolutely brutal for him given his needs. And so, but I love that there are more options in general for parents, and that they have more options to choose from. And so, but we did do this exercise with, first of all, we have kind of documents that are saying, what does courage look like when you're in kindergarten? Well, what does courage look like when you're in 5th grade? What does courage look like when you're in 8th grade? So we kind of have documents that teachers have thought through and that parents have given us feedback on, to really think through kind of just so the teachers and the adults that the children are encountering are clear, right? And that there are shared definitions. And because not everyone's going to give the definition of justice that I gave you, right? And so part of it is forming our teachers. And I remember in our very early days, we asked the teachers, courage, justice, wisdom, self-control, stand up. Well, I don't know if we asked them to stand up, but which is the one that you struggle with the most? And self-control was the one. And think about our kids, and think about our kindergartners and 1st graders. And what do they struggle with the most? Self-control, right? And so it was eye-opening to our teachers, right? So we do formation. They have gratitude journals. They journal on the virtues so that they're doing reflection. One of the other things that we implemented at Bria is something called the quietest moment of the day, because New York City in particular is very loud, very, very, very loud. And where's the time for quiet reflection, right? So we do have the Socratic dialogue, and Douglas is all over that. But where's the time for that quiet reflection where you are just So we ask the kids at the end of the day before they transition out, and sometimes we do it after lunch, and it's really short for the kindergartners and it's longer for the fifth graders, for example, right? So it's age based, and we ask them 3 questions. Okay, think about your day from when you woke up to now, and what are you grateful for? And then we ask them, think about, and this is all quiet reflection, think about your day from when you woke up to now, and where did you struggle with one of the virtues? And so let's say if justice was one of the virtues that we were highlighting. We also highlight sub-virtues, right? From the cardinal virtues.
Sure.
And then the third question is, think about tomorrow. What do you most need help with to live the virtue of courage or the virtue of justice? And it's modeled after, it's secular and it's completely appropriate. And we have really good lawyers, and our lawyers talk to the lawyers of our authorizer. So everything we are doing has been transparent. I mean, our authorizer has visited El Camino, our after school faith formation program. And we've been really intentional about how we've implemented this model to make sure that we are not crossing any church state boundaries in New York, right? And so we've given we give opportunities for quiet reflection that often you don't see in other networks of charter schools.
It's beautiful. It's actually very beautiful. And quite honestly, from what I'm seeing in the education literature, it's addressing a felt need, by which I mean students are coming. There's a whole branch, as you well know, of social emotional learning that's sort of exploring these areas. And what I hear you saying, Stephanie, is we're on that. That is to say, we're taking this model and applying it for students in a way that will help them to reflect on their own moral development in meaningful, thoughtful, day after day ways that will permeate their lives. And that's really beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm mindful of our time here because you all are busy people. And I just have to know, before we kind of wind this down, how does Bria and the Bria schools relate to the larger community? Because the distinctive features of this school seem to have relationships outside of the school. We begin, of course, with the El Camino network, but I'm guessing that the houses of worship.
Jamie. I think Jamie should answer that question.
By all means. Yeah. How does it connect to the larger community, Jamie?
Well, so so how do we think about Bria, right? Like there is Bria, our model is Bria and El Camino, our charter schools and our wraparound after school programs, right? So that's the way, that's Bria, that's the Bria model. There is, but, no, I shouldn't say but, and the secret ingredient in this mix is called the Seeing Teaching Fellows program. The Seeing Teaching Fellows program, it's a program for recent college graduates on fire for their faith. They are interested in education. They're not sure how, they're not sure what to do, what's their next step. But they know that they want to serve. They have a heart that love the church, that love Christ, and they want to serve. So the Seeing Teaching Fellows program, they come to our schools. We expose them to education during the day, right? So some of them work in operations, some of them work with students with disabilities, some of them work as the other classroom teachers, right? And they learning education, they becoming teachers. And during the after school program, they become the catechists, right? They are the ones teaching El Camino. So in terms of the Bria El Camino partnership, the Seeing Teaching Fellows is what ties all of it, right? So the children are seeing their fellows during the day, helping them how to read, how to solve a math problem, are the persons the people monitoring them during the day, during the blended learning time. And in the after school program, they're the one teaching them how to pray, how to make the sign of the cross, takes them to church. So that's the Seeing Teaching Fellows are the glue between Bria and El Camino. In terms of Bria, how Bria relates to the rest of the community, our communities are so important to us.
Yes.
We are not just another school. And I know people might say, you get paid to say that, but it's true.
No, we walk the walk. We walk the walk.
We walk the walk. We want to be partners with our communities. So we involve ourselves in the community. So we have community celebrations. We use local vendors. We have food drive, right? We partner with our parishes for Thanksgiving. We have a big Thanksgiving food drive. And all of the food that we collect, we give it back to the community. Can you imagine how powerful that is? The children and the family that struggle, trust me, they struggle. A lot of these families don't have papers, right? They cannot work legally. They're not legal in the country. A lot of our families don't speak the language. And the power of the poor.
And how happy how happy our children are when they give to others, right? That and this is something I've always known, right? Work, marriage, if you do it right, and giving of yourself. Those are three things that are so important to happiness. That's what the research shows, actually. And our kids are so generous, so generous. And it gives them joy to get all these canned foods during Thanksgiving to feed people who might have even fewer means than them. Before we go, I just want to say one thing. Great Hearts has been a model for us and an inspiration for us. And in our very early days, Great Hearts was very welcoming to us, to allow us to send our school leaders to Great Hearts, to allow us to do site visits, and even looking at the list of the great books that you introduced to your scholars, and we're just really grateful to what you do.
Well, it's our pleasure, Stephanie. I was going to ask as a final question. What, as your group, you've got a group of almost 20 or 25 coming down to Phoenix next week for our national symposium.
Yeah.
I'd like to know what you all hope to obtain from your time with us, together with us next week.
We want to learn.
Oh, well, I mean, I'll be happy to take that, Dr. Jackson. I mean, anyone who's interested in classical education is paying attention to what Great Hearts is doing. And what you've assembled at this conference, this national symposium, is staggeringly impressive. I mean, you have everyone from your first plenary speaker, Dana Gioia, who's one of the most inspiring living poets of our day, who captivates us with the way to bring a tradition to life, to inherit it, and then perpetuate it. You've got estimable historians like Bill McClay. The work that's going on is both theoretical and practical. It's bringing to life everything that we aspire to. You have pedagogues par excellence. What we're hoping is that our teachers and our leadership team are going to draw deeply from the font that you're providing, so that we take away inspiration, but also practical know-how. Both of those things are on display in stark relief, and we're hoping to build some relationships with folks there that will continue beyond the span of a symposium, that we can continue to deepen in partnership with other educators like you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to all of you, because we're looking forward to seeing you next week. And in the meantime, we'll continue to promote this tradition together. So good to have you with me today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Registration for the 2023 National Symposium for Classical Education is now open. Join us February 22nd through the 24th in Phoenix, Arizona for 3 days of unsurpassed scholarship, professional workshops, and networking opportunities. For more information, visit www.greathearts.institute. Working together to renew the tradition.